my first narrative feature. It's called Beans. It's very much inspired by my own coming of age story. It's the story of a 12-year-old Mohawk girl who comes of age during an Indigenous uprising. This Indigenous uprising did actually happen. It has been termed the Oka Crisis, and it was a 78-day armed standoff between two Mohawk communities and the Canadian government. Essentially, they sent in the army, they sent in the tanks. We were cut off from food, communication, human rights violations, all of that. And this was the summer that I realized being who I am is not something that is welcomed in the bigger world. So it was quite a way to transition from innocent child to that murky, confusing place of adolescence, but also to begin to understand my Indigenous identity in the grander scheme of things, in the bigger world. You know, within my own community, it was a very idyllic, wonderful, warm, loving, fun childhood within the safety of my community, but outside of it, not so much. So the film really looks at what happened that summer and the effect that racism and hatred, the devastating effect that that has on our young people. Yeah, that's my summation of what the film is about. It's currently, when you say where can people see it, you know, it's currently playing in a number of festivals. I believe Miami and the New York International Children's Festival. It's coming up in a number of other festivals. So if you were interested in the film, if you followed either our Instagram or our Twitter, it's Beans the Film. We're constantly posting there when and where you can see it.
Oh, nice. So I wanted to know, how do you use your own unique power and platform to tell authentic stories?
So I've had a really, really blessed career up until this point, I would say. Working first with the Aboriginal Peoples Television Network, they have been so supportive. They got it. They understood every story I've wanted to tell. They have been on board and very, very much empowering me to go and do. And likewise, the non-Indigenous people, the white allies that I have worked with, the producers, the other executives, likewise, I have been surrounded by very supportive people who have not tried to influence or get in my way, essentially. So even from the very beginning of my career, I was 22 years old when I graduated university. I was co-directing my first feature doc at 23. I felt that I was just on a very supportive road. And I now, in hearing the stories that my colleagues of color, that what they go through, I realize how lucky I have had. And it's because of all of that early support that I have been able to develop my voice and rise into my power and be able to fight those battles when you need to fight the battles, draw the lines where you need to draw the lines, hire the people that are going to be on board with the right mindset, the right heart, fire those who are not, right? Because that happens. Sometimes the interview goes great. Sometimes the references are great, but then you start working and you realize, oh my gosh, that is not the case. And being in the position of power, being able to say, that's not going to work. And thank you, but no thank you, and fire them. So I've had this kind of level of power for 20 years, since I've been directing for 20 years, or show running, let's say. And that has provided me with the platform to really say exactly what it is I want to say, to create characters that I recognize, that are true to the place I come from, characters that I wanted to see growing up, storylines and issues that matter to me, that matter to my sister, that matter to my cousins, but I also think that are very universal to so many of our experiences. You know, it's to talk about the specific, to engage everyone's heart, ideally. So that's been the goal, and I'm still working. So I think something's going well, something's going right. Yes, thanks.
So how does like telling authentic stories break down those stereotypes and those barriers, right? Like, of course, telling true stories gives the audience the opportunity to learn about people they may not have the opportunity to ever meet. So how does that, like, staying true to a story, help break down those stereotypes and those barriers?
Yes. So for so long, it has there has been, I've grown up knowing what it is to have such a massive divide between my community and the majority. It has been so harmful to us, to my community. And so a big goal of mine is to build those bridges, to bring people over, to have people relate to us, connect with us, have compassion for us. And really, it's the human experience. So we all experience some very specific things depending on the community we're from, but in the end, we're also all human. We all love, we all experience pain, loss. And so I it's so crazy to say this, I want to humanize my people to the bigger world, because up until now, the exposure that people have to my people it's so limited, or it is just so stereotypical. And so the idea of who we are is so horribly small. And then as a young person and as a young woman coming into the world and having people's expectations be so low and so confined as to who I am, it's terrible. So I want the world to be wide open to us. And in order for that to happen, I need the bigger world to see us, understand us, welcome us. Did I get off point from your original question?
No, you're good. No, this is great.
Good. Yeah. And here's the other thing about stereotypes, right? Is that they are so harmful to the people, putting us on screen for the sake of it, but doing so terribly and very one-dimensionally does not help us. It harms us. So we deserve to see ourselves on screen just as everyone else does. And true representation, multifaceted, complex, beautiful, flawed representation of us, because that is who we are. And I know for so much of my life, I have been working to prove those stereotypes wrong.
Right.
And it takes so much energy to put into proving myself and proving the world wrong, as opposed to just going out and living my life. Like so many, I feel like that's a part of what white privilege is that you're able to go out and just live your life as you wish. You are not,
just be.
You can just be. And that doesn't exist for us yet, but it will.
Yes.
It will.
So someone wanted to know, how hard was it to get this movie off the ground, Beans? And was it difficult to get a budget? Like, was it difficult to get funding for this film?
So the Canadian system up here is very much funded by public money. So we have a number of institutions up here that you apply for. Of course, we all compete against one another. So there's no guarantee that you submit that you will get the funding. But it's a much different system than what you have down in the United States. Of course, there's always challenges, again, in competition with a number of other people. But I will say that, especially with where we are in the world right now, these institutions they know they need to remedy the faults of the past. And so there is great motivation up here right now to get behind not only Indigenous people, but people of color,
Right.
to fix the inequity that has been the reality of this industry for as long as it's existed. So I would say that the partners came on pretty quick and enthusiastically for this film. Our budget was still for the scope that the film is. The budget, we stretched that budget far, and we could have used more. But I think for what we got, it was a good budget for, especially it's my first narrative feature. And again, the support was there, and I never felt that there was interference. Everybody really got behind my vision and wanted to empower and uplift my voice.
Nice. So it's doing the festival run. How has it been perceived by the audience? I know we're all like in, doing social distancing, but have you been able to hear what the audience have to say once they're done watching your film?
So I've been able to get a bit of feedback from audience members, either through social media, somebody posts, and to all those people that do, thank you. It's so great. It's one of the big things that I think I miss is the live audience. I love to feel an audience's experience of the film, but then afterwards, of course, being able to get some feedback on how it's received. There's also been, some festivals who have gotten feedback from their audiences, and the festival reaches out and sends it to me. So far, the film has been received just incredibly well by critics as well. Of course, I can find that gets posted up online. It's really exceeded my hopes for the film, and of course, my hopes were very high. Our hopes are always high for our babies that we've nurtured for so long, and everything that I'm hearing and reading, people are getting it. People are getting what I wanted to say, and there's nothing more fulfilling for a filmmaker, I think, to set out to want to talk about something specific in an entertaining way, and then to find out that it's registering, it's resonating, it's impacting. When I hear that people have cried multiple times to the movie, that's 10 high fives for me.
Yeah, right.
I want to know that your heart opened and feelings were flowing. Yeah.
Nice. What about the community? What was the feedback from the community?
So I haven't been able to do any specific community screenings because of COVID, but those people who have tuned in virtually to festivals and have also then reached out, it's a small number of people that actually do reach out, but the feedback I've gotten has been very positive. Of course, there's a lot of difficult moments in the film, and for my own people specifically, it's reliving, one of the most traumatic moments in our history. So it's difficult, it's heavy, but I've also heard that even though it is difficult and heavy, it's necessary. We want our stories out there. We want our experiences. It's the word I want. There's a lot of power to bearing witness.
Yes.
And remembering, but the tone of the film was also really important to me, that we didn't stay there. It's not a movie about trauma. It's actually, I hope that my goal was for the film to celebrate the resilience of my people, and empower young girls that the trauma you experience does not need to define you. Don't let it pull you down. Find your way to rise above it so it doesn't win.
Nice. What should non-Native and Indigenous writers know about telling your stories, right?
So we really are at a point, we have been saying it, we've had a big advocacy push up here in Canada, that it's time it's time for people to step back from telling our stories. We are here now, and it's our time to tell our stories. So your fascination should not be a motivator. If you're fascinated by us, or you're fascinated about a moment in history and you think other people would be interested in it, that is not a reason to take on a story or a project. Your fascination needs to be handed over and have us welcomed in to do that. So either bring us in and partner with us, or step back and find another story.
So to follow up, like, how do you keep those stereotypes out of the writer's room, and like, or how do you voice your opinion? Do you feel that you have the power to do so? Because I can see writers being BIPOC writers being in rooms and not feeling that they have the power to voice it. So how would you give advice to a writer, a BIPOC writer that might be in a writer's room and they're thinking, oh, no, that doesn't sound right to me. I don't think we should put that in. So how, like, any advice you might have?
So it is very scary, especially if you're the only person sitting there. You know, it's so great when there's just at least two people of color at the table, because then you can have each other's back. But when you're the only one, yeah, it can be really intimidating, especially knowing that everyone at the table doesn't get it. You know, if they're all like, oh, great idea, great idea, great idea, to the idea that's on the table, and you're sitting there going, oh my God, no, that's a terrible idea. And it's so obvious why that's terrible. But all of a sudden, you know that these 8 people are all digging it. Oh my God. So oh goodness gracious. I want to stress how important it is that you do speak up. It's scary. But that's where we have to find that courage, because our voices right now at that table is what will change things. We need to start seeing authentic representation on screen. And in fact, here's the thing, what we have to bring in that level of storytelling, it is beyond what white people can bring. And so when you speak up and give the layers and the reasons and the context, that is going to blow the story wide open in so many wonderful ways. So if you are in a supportive room, they're going to see that. They're going to see that now. Not all rooms are supportive and safe, and that's where it gets really tricky. I do advise that you approach the topics very carefully and diplomatically. And I wish you didn't have to, but you've got all of these different sort of egos at the table. You've got different comfort levels around the table. You know what is really difficult for white people is for them to realize that they, especially like liberal, creative white people,
well-meaning writers and creators.
yes, for them to realize that maybe they have an unconscious bias, or maybe what they've said is hurtful, or maybe what they said is actually really ignorant and built off of stereotypes, but they don't know. Pointing that out it's that delicate dance, because you want to build allies in that room. You don't want to shut down, and you don't want all that ego to come into play, and then all of a sudden you no longer have an ally at that table. So we actually have to do like emotional gymnastics in speaking our truth, doing so respectfully and openly, and doing so in a way that everyone at that table doesn't feel threatened or judged, so that they can stay open and hear it. So it's tricky. Not only do we have to be courageous, but we also have to be really diplomatic and it can lead to some bitterness of like, why does it have to, why does all of that responsibility fall on us? Why do I have to do all of this? And I always just focus on the bigger picture, and the bigger picture is getting that story right on screen. Because that story that gets put on screen and that our people and our children watch, that's where we make the difference.
Yes.
When the greater society watches and learns more, understands more, connects more, builds more compassion for our communities, that's the win. And so that's what fuels me in those moments to stay calm and be, and use the right words and be careful with people's feelings and hold my ground. So you may get pushback, and you need to hold your ground, and then, stick up for it again. If it's really important, this is the thing in writer's room, if it's really important, then you hold it. And maybe the solution you want isn't working for some reason. There's a character that would not do that. Okay. You know what the truth is. Together as a room, you figure out the win for the truth and for the story.
Right.
Yes. So when you speak up, the first reaction may not be great, but that doesn't mean let it go. You have to hold that ground for the bigger purpose. Yeah.
Nice. So how do we continue to push the narrative of Native and Indigenous stories? Because I know in our previous panel that we had with BIPOC writers, they were all like, you just got to keep writing. You got to keep getting your foot in the door, and you got to keep saying, no, these are the stories that we need to tell. Please give us the opportunity and we'll make you proud. So how do we just keep pushing these stories?
I think it is on us to just keep producing, keep making, keep speaking up in those rooms when we have the chance, or with our own work. And definitely up here in Canada, the work we've been doing as Indigenous creators, it's been really 20 years since the Aboriginal Peoples Television Network started. It's been 20 years of developing talent. We're now at a place where you cannot deny the power of our stories. You can't deny that we don't have the skill to tell these stories at every level. So that's unfortunate. Like, that's the work that we've all been doing it. And there are still a number of sort of mountains for us to climb, but we're getting there. I do see that we're getting there, and I do see more and more allies stepping up by stepping back. So
that's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's important.
Yep.
Do you have any practical advice for filmmakers looking to break into Hollywood?
So I don't know that I'm the best to give that advice, since my entire career so far has been up in Canada.
Or in Canada.
Yeah. So network is super important. We really do. We hire who we know, in a sense. And especially in the beginning, that's so frustrating, because you're in the beginning, you don't know anybody. And so that's the work you need to do. You need to be making connections. You need to build your network. And I think the easiest way to do that is to be actively involved in film festivals. That's a chance where you can meet people like me, producers, and make those connections. People, we want to work. We want it. What do I want to say here? It's not just a great idea. It's the great person behind the idea. So you could have a fantastic idea, but if you have issues, the idea, I will pass on that fantastic idea. So building up those relationships are really important. And you don't have to start building those relationships only when you have the work ready. It's the same thing. If you came to me with a great Bible and a great pilot, and our first meeting is that meeting, okay, I may really love the material, but I don't know you enough yet. So I'm going to want to develop that relationship a bit more, because projects, they really are like marriages. So you really want to, and likewise, the other way around is true too. Make sure you know who you're marrying, because if it's not good, that is a very dysfunctional few years you're going to have to live, because you know you're not leaving. If it's your baby, you're not leaving your baby behind, you're going to stick it out. So you want to choose those partners very carefully. So not only are you building relationships so people know you, you're building them so you can know who you would want to work with. And then our own peer network is so important. So our peer network can make introductions to break the ice, which is great. And our peer network can also share with each other, that person's crazy, don't work for them. This person, which has been my experience a lot of the time, this person totally gets our stories, totally wants to be an ally and supportive. I really recommend you give them a call, or I'll send them a note about you, that type of thing. Like the network, peer network is so important, and then building relationships is so important.
Lastly, can you tell us about any projects you're working on, or anything that we should look out for, and how can people follow you and learn more about Beans and potentially the next screening that they can catch Beans?
So for Beans, you can follow at Beans the Film on Instagram or Twitter. For myself, I'm much more active on Twitter. So that's at Tracey Deer, Tracey with an E. In terms of what's next, I am trying to figure that out right now. A lot of my energy went into Beans. It really became really my whole world there for that like year and a half that it takes. And you typically want to have a few balls in the air all the time, so that when your film comes out and you're asked this question, you're able to say, yeah, I have like these two other things happening. So it's not great, but I'm taking meetings, and I'm looking at IP, and I'm figuring out what's going to be next.
Well, it's good that you're having the chances and the opportunity to look at IP. I really enjoyed Beans, and I just hope that people get the opportunity to catch it wherever it's screening. I know Athena had it, and they're a great film festival, and we're a film festival as well. So if you would love to screen Beans at Imagine This Women's International Film Festival, let us know.
Okay.
Thank you, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to our audience for tuning in and asking some great questions for Tracey. And I just really appreciate the time that you took to hang out with us and let people know more about breaking stereotypes. So thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you for